Did you know that photosynthesis and avian navigation in birds utilize quantum explanations? Or that we ourselves and our biology is subject to the quantum realm? Quantum biology is a fascinating and emerging interdisciplinary field that explores how quantum mechanics might play a role in the biological processes. I'm Bhavidhir V. Bharadwaj. Welcome to episode 9 of Genesis of Tomorrow. The following is a conversation about quantum biology, quantum effects in DNA, aging, immunology, drug discovery, artificial life, astrobiology, and more with Dr. Clarice D. Aiello, a MIT and Stanford researcher and quantum engineer interested in how quantum physics informs biology, who's currently also the chief scientific officer at Quantum Biology Institute, California. Also, 86.1% of you watching this have not subscribed yet. If you get even the slightest bit of value from our show, please support us by clicking that subscribe button so that we can keep improving the quality of the episodes and keep on bringing such wonderful guests over for you. And now, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Enjoy and thank you. Um, the other day I was talking with my father, and he has got a formal background in biology and has studied botany quite thoroughly. So I was talking to him about how quantum mechanics informs biology, and he was intrigued by it, to say the least. So I went on to explain to him about how it informs photosynthesis and then, other aspects in the human body and different things, its different implications. And I really feel that things like these examples, like maybe how it directly correlates to photosynthesis in plants or the avian navigation in birds, it's a
Yes,
good starting point to familiarize the newcomers too. So
yes.
how does it work, from you?
Awesome. So, as you just mentioned, quantum biology is the profound proposition that biology runs on quantum, that very fast, a very tiny phenomena might actually have a macroscopic implications for the workings of biology. Quantum biology is not new. It's been around for a long time. One of the first people to sort of propose that biology is more than the laws of statistical mechanics was Schrödinger, one of the founding figures of quantum physics, in his tiny book "What's Life." Um, but quantum biology has never broken through, right? Which I think is why people don't know about it at all. And I think that quantum biology has never broken through because there's no direct causal evidence that it's true. Let me tell you a little bit about what has been unambiguously shown. There is no doubt that for proteins and biocompounds in solution and at room temperature, certain things only work because of quantum mechanics. However, the next level of evidence comes from organisms and plates of cells that respond to external stimuli in a way that is consistent with quantumness surviving inside the cells for long enough for it to matter. Okay, but everything that starts quantum dies classical, and this is why we live in a classical world. And usually, when physicists or people in general think about quantum mechanics, they think about things that happen at very, very low temperatures, under vacuum, under very controlled conditions. So it is rightfully so counterintuitive and daring to assume that quantumness survives inside cells for long enough for it to matter. Okay, so even though there's more than 50 years of evidence of things in solution and organisms that respond in a way that is consistent, there hasn't been a causal link unambiguously showing that in a single cell, quantumness survives for long enough unambiguously for it to matter. Quantum is used for function. And I think you're going to not find it surprising that this is exactly what I want to do in my own research program. We want to unambiguously prove or refute that quantumness exists inside cells for long enough for it to matter.
How do you exactly do that? How do you analyze and try to comprehend physically these quantum processes that happen or are happening inside the or in the biological environment?
Yes. So there are several flavors of quantum biology, two of which you mentioned, photosynthesis and birds that navigate using the magnetic field of the Earth, which is orders of magnitude smaller than the magnitude of the magnetic field produced by your cell phone. I study more generally the effect of weak magnetic fields on biology. And again, birds are the poster children of this field, this subfield, this flavor. But actually, there is a lot of correlative, not causal, but correlative evidence. There's a bubbling soup of magnetic field effects in biology that seem to depend on quantum stuff. So the way that I think one is going to unambiguously prove or refute what I call the quantum biology hypothesis, that is, that biology runs on quantum, is by building true quantum instrumentation to do true quantum measurements inside biology. For example, the proteins that are known to sense magnetic fields in a quantum way in solution, they, for reasons that are well understood in the chemistry, they fluoresce, they emit light at different intensities if depending on the quantum state of a particular electron. Okay. Now, if we were to be able to detect those differences in fluorescence intensity inside those proteins, inside cells, we would be unambiguously proving that quantumness of proteins inside cells live for long enough. So I think that the way to make the needle move is to go beyond experiments in solution and experiments with organisms that react to stimuli, and rather go from bottom up. Take a single cell and look for quantum signatures inside proteins inside the single cell. And from there on, we can start building from single cells to tissues, maybe to tissues, to behavior, and so forth. It's a long road.
Definitely, but you initially mentioned how quantum biology is not a novel scientific study, area of
Yes,
scientific study.
yes,
However, there is that tipping point of achieving a breakthrough. How long do you think
yes.
before we achieve that point?
I think we're probably 5 to 10 years away, right? I do think that proving that inside a single cell things are quantum for long enough for it to matter is this thing that's going to make the scale tip. That's what I'm betting my career on, right? Uh, but I think that there's another breakthrough that will come when funding agencies recognize quantum biology as a thing. Right now, there are no standing calls for quantum biology in usual funding mechanisms here in the US, and which causes a lot of problems. The field is chronically underfunded. Talent doesn't come to the field because it's an uncertain field. So I also think that there is, besides the scientific turning point, I also think there has to be a social turning point where quantum biology gets accepted and people start funding this at scale.
I believe to do just that, people need to realize the significance of the implications that this field may have
Yes,
in the long term.
you are absolutely right, right? And the thing that I always say is that quantum biology is super cool, but it's not a scientific curiosity only, right? I think it gives us a profound new way to actuate on biology. It's a completely different lever, right? So, for example, as I mentioned, I study the effect of weak magnetic fields in biology, which we believe has a quantum origin. People have been finding magnetic fields that do stuff in biology for decades. For example, people found a magnetic field that can reduce the size of cancer tumors. Then and then that's like a company. Another company found a magnetic field that increased the proliferation rate of lab-grown meat. Okay, another company found a magnetic field that actually improves muscle healing. But as far as we can tell, when we talk to those people, those fields are found completely haphazardly by chance. So imagine, and this is what quantum biology would give you. Imagine if you have the predictive power of which magnetic fields do what in biology. Imagine if you could engineer magnetic fields to do something on purpose and not stumble upon magnetic fields. Then you could imagine having a code book on like which magnetic fields can do what. So maybe one day, again, this is completely science fiction, you could have in your phone, you could have an app, and then you go there and you say, well, today I need help with wound healing. And then you click there, and then your cell phone produces the magnetic field that you need, and then you do this. Or imagine having smart textiles that do this as well, right? So we think that this flavor of quantum biology, namely big magnetic field effects, again, can control the whole machinery of the cell in a different way. It's in a rational way. The cool thing about that is that it's not chemical, it's electromagnetic. You don't need genetic engineering because the lever, the button is there, is already encoded in biology. You just need to find the instruction set on how to tweak it. Magnetic fields penetrate through tissue. You don't have the issue of like lasers that don't go into or something like this. And it may be cheap. I also do think that it might have lots of applications for global health. You know, imagine someone in a poor village that doesn't have access to a doctor or to chemicals, but they have access to their cell phone. And if they could have medicine coming out of their cell phone, I think that's big. And another thing that seems super crazy until we think about that is the fact that life on Earth is optimized to the weak magnetic field of the Earth, which again is tiny, is on the orders of magnitude smaller than the magnetic field of your cell phone. However, when you remove this tiny field, biology goes crazy. People have been doing this for a long time, so people have, for example, tried to grow cells, grow organisms in boxes that mostly passively shield the magnetic field of the Earth, which is already tiny. We just performed the most badass version of this experiment. We just published the article. It's at bit.ly /tadpole paper. We grew like almost 3,000 tadpoles in this kind of box that shields against the magnetic field of the Earth. And what we saw was accelerated aging. Tadpoles develop faster if you remove the magnetic field of the Earth, right? It's cool. They do something, but the most important thing is that tadpoles are sensing the absence of the magnetic field of the Earth, which is tiny. And up to now, when people report those things, people say, "Oh, uh, those results are probably flukes. Those fields are too small to trigger a biophysical sensing mechanism." And now we have proven in many different ways that this is a flawed argument, because we can show that tadpoles do sense the absence of the magnetic field of the Earth, right? Uh, it's not surprising that tadpoles are probably mostly well adapted to develop under Earth's magnetic field, but it raises a question of, if we want to colonize Mars, what's the magnetic field on Mars? And it's way smaller than the magnetic field of the Earth. So if we want to colonize Mars, we need to start paying attention to that, because we don't want to have increased aging for astronauts and so forth, right? So quantum biology may have implications from longevity to, say, space exploration.
Okay, let's take a deep dive into each facet of this, starting with the aging bit. What exactly can be the role of quantum biology in aging in regard to maybe extending the human lifespan?
Yeah. So, weak magnetic fields have been shown for like 50 years to both up and down regulate. That's a key point. It up and down regulates depending on the field parameters. Things such as DNA repair yields, how much cell division occurs, the configuration of the cytoskeleton of the cell, the functioning of ion channels in the brain and in all cells, how much energy gets produced. So, uh, all of those things are consistent with having a quantum origin underlying this magnetic field sensitivity. So it is no exaggeration to to affirm that weak magnetic fields can up and down regulate the whole machinery of the cell. So you could, for example, think about controlling cellular oxidative stress just by messing up with magnetic field conditions. And I think that that's not the only application, but it's one application that has very clear and direct implications for longevity, right? So I do think that this lever that we want to control is very versatile, and that with time and with this code book, we might learn how to improve cellular functioning with a lot of applications for to treat aging, right?
We've seen that quantum effects are viable in DNA and cellular scales. Could it also have an effect in the genetic variation and mutation, and in the long term in evolution itself?
Yes, there are theories, there are theory papers that propose exactly this, that another flavor of quantum biology, namely the tunneling of electrons and protons, that those could have effects in DNA mutations, right? Uh, like most of quantum biology, there's a lack of available data. There's so many beautiful experiments that should get done in order for us to unambiguously prove or refute those hypotheses. But tunneling as a force behind evolution and a force behind genetic mutations is a thing, yes.
Also, you talked very wonderfully about how we need to understand quantum biology at large if we want to become a multiplanetary civilization, right?
Yes,
How it
yes,
directly correlates into astrophysics and astrobiology, even. Like, we need to understand
I know.
quantum biology and its implications, its effects on the human body itself. To elucidate the entire process, you very briefly touched upon it when you talked about the difference between the magnetic fields of Earth and Mars, but to completely break down and enumerate the entire process, how would it work if we are to go about this route?
So I think let me digress a little bit. So if we want to do multi-generational space travel, we do need to think about quantum biology. And in fact, I suspect, this is a hypothesis, that a lot of so NASA and other space companies, they know that they have to care about radiation, they know that they have to care about microgravity. I have never been able to obtain the information of what magnetic field conditions are inside, for example, the space station. I suspect, this is a hypothesis, that a lot of the effects that people currently attribute to, say, microgravity might be a confluence of effects, both from microgravity and from weak magnetic fields, right? So I think we need to be able to separate those two things. And we really need to give the effects of weak magnetic fields a place of honor in what we should be caring about. For example, I know that there is a lot of people thinking about how we can cryopreserve astronauts so that we can travel beyond the galaxy. It's a completely moot effort if you get to Saturn and then you discover that the magnetic fields there don't support life, right? I've come to think of this as like weak magnetic field effects for growing organisms. It's an acute effect, and for adult organisms cause chronic things, right? So I suspect that for space exploration, it's going to be, if we don't take care about magnetic fields, it's going to be painful to try to grow things in space, to try to reproduce in space, to try to uh, like food security in space is extremely important to have in mind, that in order for things to grow, weak magnetic fields can have acute effects.
Also, taking probably a little detour in this conversation of ours, how did you develop this passion and inclination towards this field? Like,
Yes,
tell me
yes,
from when you were a
yes.
child, because I
Oh
feel
no, no,
it starts very early, right?
no, no,
No.
no, it didn't. No, it didn't. As a child, I didn't even want to be a scientist. As a child, I was a big reader. Still am, but less. I wanted to be a writer and a journalist. So no, no. I ended up in engineering and in physics as sort of as a detour, but that's not the deal. So I am trained as an experimental quantum physicist, right? So I build instruments to study and control uh, things that are so small and usually so well protected from their environment, they're better described by the laws of quantum physics. And in particular, I'm trained in a field known as quantum sensing. The idea is that you can mathematically prove that if you use a quantum object, such as an electron, as a sensor, your measurement is improved. In other words, the sensor quantumness enhances your measurement. In my PhD, I worked with an electron in the material, diamond, that was a very good a quantum sensor of magnetic fields at room temperature. After my PhD, I was tired. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I spent 1 year teaching and then I started sending away CVs. And then, almost by chance, I ended up in a chemistry lab. Now, it was also completely by chance that I was immersed in this chemistry sort of department. And there, I became aware of the fact that chemists were aware of quantum-like magnetic field sensing in proteins in a way that I think is indistinguishable from quantum sensing, the type of quantum sensing that I worked with, but they didn't call it quantum sensing at all, right? Uh, Chemists have been studying this phenomena for way longer than quantum sensing in physics have become ubiquitous. like, for example, there is one famous review paper on magnetic field effects in proteins from like 1989, right? And those things have been around for forever. And then I think that the only thing that I did new was like, I realized that those things were very similar, quantum sensing and this chemical thing of how proteins sense magnetic fields. And then I had the idea, which underlies my whole research program, which is we need to develop the same type of instrumentation that we use to study and control those electrons in diamond. We need to develop the same type of instrumentation to study and control those electrons in proteins. Right, and now what we're hoping to build is a type of microscope that can study and control the quantumness of those electrons inside proteins, inside cells.
Two things. First of all,
Yes.
it really intrigues me. Um, how does this microscope that you are working on, how is it? Firstly, what limitations of the current microscopic technology, like in
Yeah.
regard to the equipments and the
Yeah.
current technology used to study these processes, what are
Yeah.
the limitations to it that made you
Yeah.
realize that we need to build something that particularly
Yeah.
caters to this?
Yeah.
And what does this new technology that you're building offers in the long term,
Yep.
a way or a solution that might help us understand
Yes.
this entire thing better?
So the goal of the microscope is to provide causal evidence that quantumness survives inside cells, and what it gives us is an understanding of the underlying phenomenon, so that we write the code book, so that I can start saying, oh, if you want to change that protein function, you have to apply this and this and this magnetic field. If you want to alter the functioning of that other protein, it's another magnetic field. So I really want to write a code book on how to tweak those proteins using magnetic fields. Okay. Now, the microscope, it's a quantum instrument, but it's really just a glorified microscope. It's a microscope coupled to coils to give you magnetic fields. Everything needs to be synchronized down to the nanosecond, because those are the time scales of relevance for the phenomenon that we want to observe. And it has to be equipped with single photon detectors, or cameras that can tell you when single photons are arrive at the detector, because as I mentioned before, those proteins actually, just like the electron in diamond, for diamond it's exactly the same thing. The quantum sensor in diamond and those proteins that are sensing magnetic fields in a quantum way, they emit different levels of light, depending on the quantum state. So we need to be able to detect those tiny shifts in emitted light intensity, and we do so with single photon detectors.
The other thing that I really wanted to ask you or probably talk to you about is, you did mention initially, like in this part of the conversation, that as a kid you wanted to become a writer and a journalist, right?
Yes, yes,
I really feel, having heard your a few of your talks and podcasts, I really feel that the way that you explain stuff or you curate the explanations to this really complex and theory heavy topics and subject matter is in a way that helps even someone who's listening to you for the first time to understand these things
awesome,
without
thank you.
without taking away from the actual thoroughness of it, without oversimplifying it, right?
It means so much to me, thank you for
and
that.
and I'll tell you why I really wanted to talk to you about this. In a few of my past conversations, umpteen times there has been this topic that has been raised about how the leading people in scientific communities have to be just as good of scientific communicators to reach out to
Yes,
the general masses. And
Yes.
especially in a field like quantum biology,
Yeah.
it's it becomes even more paramount that the
Yeah.
people who are at the vanguard are good at explaining this stuff to the masses.
Storytellers. Yeah.
Correct, correct. How do you see it? What do you feel is the current diaspora of communicators in the scientific community, and could it be elevated for the newcomers
Yeah.
who get into this?
Yeah. Uh, Science communication. I agree. True, 300%. Uh, Science communication is usually comes as an afterthought, right? Because incentives are not aligned. You don't you don't get more grants. I mean, you don't get more currency if you're a science communicator, a good science communicator or not, which is a pity, right? Uh, I think that in a time of general science mistrust, right? In times when some people don't even believe that COVID was real or something like this shows that there is a big science disconnect. I think it's super important. Uh, I think that researchers will not pay attention to that by default until there is a tangible benefit. And again, people, it's not that people don't care. People are not evil, right? It's just that we have so much stuff to do that it will remain an afterthought until there's a clear uh, societal tangible benefit for the scientists to engage in science communication. So science communication is rare, is a dying art form, right? Which is very sad, right? But it's a nasty consequence of people competing like crazy for scarce resources, right? Uh, I don't have a solution for that. I only find it sad. I do this because I have fun doing this. I find it's important enough that I give my time to that. But I cannot force anyone to do it. Uh, I think that given how science, so I used to be an academic. Now I left to form my own institute, where I have been able to think a little bit more deeply how my science gets funded. Right? Uh, Most science nowadays gets funded by governmental bodies in the US, like the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. So people will conform to whatever they ask, which in this case, it's just like for a proposal that is sometimes very incremental, uh, with a high chance of success. So while the NIH and NSF have that as priorities, revolutionary science like quantum biology will not be their priority. Science communication, uh, science outreach will not be their priority. So it's all like within the system, right? We all operate given the constraints. So it's bad, but it's the system. I think that there are pockets of people trying different things.
I'd also say that it's changing with the advent and the significance that social media holds in today's day and age. Because
That is
sometimes, and especially now and in the upcoming future, these putting out or communicating through social media sometimes becomes a testament, a statement, or even a portfolio or an effort from your end to create and generate that following
Momentum, or
moment and
yes,
momentum for that
yes.
particular technology? Because I'll tell you this, I did not know what quantum biology was before I stumbled upon your LinkedIn profile. And I knew all about,
Okay,
quantum technology, its implications in probably space science and interstellar travel.
right.
God knows all of it. But quantum biology was a very novel experience for me to get into.
Cool.
And after that, I stumbled upon a few of your talks, podcasts, some other relevant speakers who are talking about quantum biology or its effects, its whatever, the current status, the demographic,
Yep.
through me. And I, being a avid explorer and not a hardcore researcher in the field, talking about the subject to five other people in my network and then giving them that basic understanding, probably what I'm coming to is this scientific communication, direct or indirect, leads to a literacy in the field,
I agree. I agree. I agree.
which in future in some regards leads to generation of tangible benefits, maybe
I
funding
agree.
or
I
the
agree.
intake of talent,
I
talent
agree.
acquisition for the people in that field.
I totally, totally agree. But that's not immediate,
That's
right?
not immediate, correct. Hmm.
It's an investment. I
Hmm.
totally agree. And I think this is an investment worth making, right? And I totally agree. Social media is becoming a currency, right? Uh, I do think I stand to benefit if I do this type of things, right? But it's an investment, right? It's an investment that I'm willing to make, um, and you're yeah. Again, as you say, it's an investment. It may or may not pan out, right? I'm willing to hope it it will.
Okay, coming back to the more hefty discussion that we were having,
Yes.
what are the, you again touched upon these matters briefly in your previous explanations, but how does quantum biology facilitate a way to advancements in vaccines and immunology? Does it have any effect on it? If yes, what is it?
N- Not immediately. Um, so, vaccines, I do not know. There is an interesting tangential interest for both drug development and for understanding how, for example, cells, viruses attach to cells. Let me take that tangent because they both go together. So, uh, when you talk about molecular recognition in biology, how antibodies bind to antigens, usually it's another flavor of quantum bio now. Usually people think about lock and key. So there's a lock and there's a key that comes, and once those things interact, the thing binds and something happens, right? That's how viruses attach to cells or something like this. There's a theory. Again, we need experiments. We need quantum-like experiments. But there is a theory that is quantum mechanical in origin. I'll explain in a second. That proposes that rather it's lock, key, and vibration. That this key molecule provides, in addition to shape, the right vibrations uh, to help electrons tunnel. So this is within a class of a class of processes, of which photosynthesis is now the most famous. the most up-to-date understanding on how photosynthesis work is through this type of phonon-assisted process. That is, phonons that actually help with tunneling process. They're also called noise-assisted process. So photosynthesis, molecular recognition. It's molecular recognition then is also thought to be phonon-assisted, noise-assisted process. So quantum biology would be able to try to determine whether this is true. And again, if this is true, that it's not only lock and key, but lock and key and vibrations, you could start to think of like molecules or like for drug development, for example, molecules that would actually help with binding effects based on their vibrations. You could start to understand better like how to disrupt a virus attaching to a cell, maybe by flooding the virus with a frequency that it doesn't like. I mean, completely science fiction right now, right? But again, I think that quantum biology in general gives you extra levers on how to actuate on biology. So I think that it's worth mentioning this other flavor of quantum bio, for which there's a lot of theory, but we're missing the experiments, right? We're missing.
I think it will also directly correlate to agriculture and the increase in the efficacy of food production as well in some way.
That is correct. I mean, this lock and key and vibration and also magnetic fields, if you can find the magnetic fields that make your crops grow faster. So yes, there are all those angles, right? And this is just to say that, you know, quantum biology is not only about birds, not only about photosynthesis. It's, we think, again, it's like a bubbling soup of quantum phenomena that really might be underlying really the whole biology, right? And it's, I don't think it's a surprising idea, right? So humans got to quantum physics and to quantum computing 300 years after the Industrial Revolution. Nature has had billions of years to try a lot of stuff. Uh, and it probably didn't find one particular way of using this. It's probably spread throughout, and I think that people just need to recognize and and in this I hope experiments unambiguously proving this link will help. But people need to recognize how widespread, how permeating this is.
Drawing a string from one of the aspects that you mentioned in the very initial phase of this conversation right now, uh, in that experiment with the tadpoles, you were able to
Yes,
primarily affect their biology in some way by tweaking the magnetic fields and affecting
yes,
the quantum
yes.
parts of their biology.
We cannot prove that it's quantum with those
Right.
experiments, but we write in the paper that the most likely explanation is that. And the whole goal of that paper was, if you will, a publicity stunt, because people have been reporting this for decades, and the scientific consensus never updates. So I have a statistics, right? So a statistic. In about 70% of the talks that I give, after my talk, there's always someone who raises their question and say, all those effects that people report are fake. People are reporting experimental flukes. It's other things doing those effects. And we conceived the most badass experiment that we could, with a super high N. All the data, all the analysis are all public. We controlled for things such as temperature, pressure, evaporation, light levels, in order just to update the consensus that those effects were real, right? Because when we started doing our research and talking about quantum effects in biology, people sometimes, I think that most people believe that birds sense the Earth's magnetic field to migrate, but that's about it. And we need to bring to the consensus that those things exist. They have been reported across the tree of life and for many cell types, and that those effects are real. So that paper, if you will, is a big publicity stunt just to update the consensus that the effects are real. They can those experiments that we did and that exist, they cannot prove unambiguously the stuff. What we want to do now is to prove. But sorry, continue. Please continue.
But yeah, coming on to it, in future again, idea conceptualization here maybe could, in future, after we understand the quantum aspects of biology, could we be able to design or function could we be able to design functioning quantum
Yes.
enhanced life forms or
Yes.
organisms? Would it be possible?
I think so. There's nothing. Yes. Um, we can use the design principles of synthetic biology and just add another lever. For example, the lever on how to respond to magnetic fields, for sure. For sure. I do think that we will be able to design things for quantum biological optimality.
We also talked about quantum literacy a bit, right?
Yes,
Explicitly talking about it, should everybody be literate with regards to the working and functioning of the quantum world? If yes, why exactly and how?
resounding yes, resounding yes. Because sometimes it's not made super explicit, but we already live in a quantum world. The GPS in your phone, your laser pointer, your classical laptop, they only work because of quantum physics, right? So I am a big advocate for quantum literacy. I think that anyone with a high school degree should be literate in quantum physics. Let me shout out to a bunch of young people who are making this a reality. So you would think that the main people trying to bring quantum literacy to the masses are the professors in the no, they are like the 20 something people from Qubit by Qubit, which is like a 501c3. Look them up, Qubit by Qubit, and they have quantum computing courses, quantum mechanical courses for free. And there are lots of quantum mechanics courses at Coursera, EDX, all free. Everyone should be quantum literate. Um, I think that sometimes the physicists are the ones to undermine those processes when they say things like, oh, no one understands quantum physics, or quantum physics doesn't make sense. It's all false. It's quantum physics is not rocket science. It shouldn't be sold as rocket science. It should be made accessible, right? And because it underlies the world that we live in, I am extremely passionate about that. If there are two things that I think people should young people should do is learning a little bit how to code, and learning quantum mechanics. And in the same way that when I was in high school, coding was not a thing, right? There you only learned coding if you went to like engineering and in the second year of, right? Right now there's like middle school folks learning how to code. It's the same with quantum. I hope it will go the same way, right? I hope that maybe in 10, 20 years middle school kids are learning the basics of quantum mechanics, because it fundamentally underlies the world that we already live in. Quantum has arrived, right?
I agree to the point that you made that quantum mechanics traditionally has been shrouded in a cloak of mysticism and mystical art, all those
Yeah,
things.
I
It
know. Yeah.
doesn't have to be that.
It doesn't have to be this way at all, at all, at all, right? It's crazy. And sometimes the physicists are the first to spread that. So no, no. Quantum is fun. Quantum is absolutely understandable. Quantum is relevant. And you just have to find the
Yeah,
right course for
correct.
you. Yeah.
Probably even just going onto the Wikipedia page of after you search quantum mechanics on Google, just try
Yeah.
reading that and understanding the basic terminology of what superposition is, entanglement is,
Yes.
all these general things.
Yes.
Okay, probably taking a little deep dive into this, what according to you should be the contents of this quantum curriculum for somebody to, at the end of its completion, become quantum literate and a good and have and good understanding of the field?
Um, you mentioned it already, is understanding that nature itself is probabilistic, that nature has features of wave mechanics, that uh, small things can behave in a quantum mechanical way that can be understood, uh, that nature is made out of quantum things like photons, which are particles of light, phonons, which are particles of vibrations, right? And also that quantum is useful. For example, the basic tenet of quantum biology is that there is a scale shifting effect, that tiny things happening very fast can have macroscopic consequences, which is more or less the same tenet of quantum computing, which is like tiny things can actually help with very real world problems. So yeah, I think those are the things that I would single out.
All right, all the folks listening to this, after this, spend 1 hour and develop this basic understanding of quantum mechanics.
Yes,
It's
and
important.
Google qubit by qubit. Let me try to find their website, qubit by qubit, because I'm an advisor for them, but I don't get money for them, and they're like they're the people, they're the adults in the room. The academia failed everyone because academia, and they, so website qubitbyqubit.org. They provide online free quantum mechanics courses. They are awesome. They're better than any other online online provider of quantum stuff. Go talk to the young people. They're the ones making the difference.
Right. Okay. This aspect is science has always been a double edged sword, like with most other things, where there has always been an intent of helping humanity and the betterment of the human race. Its utilizations umpteen times has always been for the destruction and weaponization as well.
Yes.
What is the potential for the weaponization of quantum biology or even
Yeah.
magnetic fields in regard to it,
Yeah.
electromagnetic
Yeah.
fields?
Yeah. Yeah. We've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Um, and we came to the conclusion that research being done is better than non-research being done because of the risk. But there are risks, right? For example, if a foreign power magically finds a magnetic field that does something bad to you, and they manage to install a virus on your cell phone that produces that particular magnetic field, you basically get to half of humanity very, very fast, right? Um, so let me just open a parenthesis here about people who are worried about cell phones, not for defense purposes, but so certain proteins respond to very particular magnetic fields. I think that right now, the likelihood that the magnetic field produced by your cell phone is doing something bad to you, like people who are afraid of 5G, is the same as the likelihood that your cell phone is doing something good to your health. I think it's very unlikely. Both scenarios are unlikely. Probably it's not doing anything because the magnetic field is not fine-tuned to anything, right? Close parenthesis. But were a bad power find out before we do how to do bad things with the magnetic field produced by your cell phone, it's a very easy way to get to people, right? So we worked with a group called Archimedes Network, who did a report on risks of quantum biology. And what they did, they came up with scenarios exactly like this. For example, maybe in a particular swing state here in the US, there are like election swing states, right? Maybe there is in a particular swing state, in a particular county that you know is going to vote one way, you install viruses on cell phones and people get sick and then they don't go out to vote. And then you wipe out the virus, nobody really knows what went on. Those scenarios are always possible. We think that the best way to counter those scenarios are to learn what magnetic fields are bad, so that the moment those pop up, you know how to counter, right? So we think that the solution is not doing the research, because it's not going to prevent bad actors from doing the research, but to actually doing all the research and basically put it all online, as we propose to do, make it all open science, so that uh, those things can have the best chance of being detected if they arise.
Have you seen Kingsman: The Secret Service? It's a movie.
Tell me more.
Its primary plot consists of the bad guy Samuel L. Jackson. Uh,
Okay.
the evil organization constructs a mobile phone virus
No,
that utilizes
really?
electromagnetic frequencies to tamper with people's heads and make them
Oh
overly
my
aggressive
god!
and fight with each other
Oh
and
my
begin killing
god!
each other.
Crazy. That's super cool. Okay.
Dr. Clarice, I really believe this. Science fiction is something true, but just probably decades and
Yep.
decades ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
It
I agree.
like the only reason why it's fiction and not entirely science is because we are limited by the technology of our
I
times.
know. I know. Yes. 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 Totally.
But
Totally. And this is
yes,
and this is why we should have like a public repository of those things, right? It's the only way that we can actually monitor what's going on. Imagine that you had a filter that monitors for those particular magnetic field frequency intensity combinations to filter them out.
people really think umpteen times that to not to avoid this possibility of weaponization of such scientific fields is to not approach them or be shush about them. However, it's the counter opposite. You have to do intensive research in these domains and
I agree.
know everything there is to know about it, and then be
Yeah.
proactive in making policies, laws, and just curating it so that it can't be used
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. And I think and leave everything available. I don't know how it would have played out for things like the atomic bomb, for example. If I don't know, I think it's slightly different, but not that dissimilar, right? I don't know what would have happened if all the atomic stuff had been done in the open. But maybe if from the start we could make quantum biology research open, I think it helps the field and it helps prepare from attacks of bad actors.
It acts as a deterrent, right? Today, the
I think
reason
so
why
too.
the chance of nuclear warfare is minimal is because people know that everybody, the main powers of on both sides, they have nuclear warheads. So if
Yes.
you try to jump and attack them with nuclear
Yeah.
warheads, there's an equal possibility that you will be attacked by them
Yes.
in retaliation.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
Okay, right. This is a segment that we've been doing on the show. What is your word for humanity at large?
Oh, that's profound. I'm taking a couple of seconds to think. I think that quantum mechanics is powerful. Uh, I think the quantum mechanical tools will provide a fundamentally different way to actuate on biology, and that we should use it. I think that um, we need to graduate biology from the laws of Newton to the laws of Maxwell to quantum mechanics in order to really understand what biology is doing, right? And if it turns out that biology truly runs on quantum, we gain a completely fundamental new set of tools to actuate on biology. It's a pity if we don't harness that for global health, for longevity, and for other pursuits.
Dr. Clarice Aiello, it was a delightful conversation. Thank you
Same
so much.
here. Thank you. Thank you. I had super, super fun. Thanks for having me. And I hope your listeners will be excited about quantum mechanics. And if I may, go visit our website, the website of the quantum biology ecosystem. We are at quantumbiology.eco, ECO, and from that there's like different entities, and our research is done by the Quantum Biology Institute, and we are at quantumbiology.org.
For people wanting to check it out, all these links will be attached in the description. Kindly go and please support this new, not new, but the need of the hour scientific field right now. And yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so
I
much, Dr.
had
Clarice.
I had super fun. Thank you for having me.